A story once again that the woke mainstream media, well, they only got into about a year, little less than a year after we covered it here on the platform. The story of Janet Dixon, who has refused as a real estate agent to take part in I think it was a 2-hour compulsory training, retraining course, and they have to retrain and update every year, real estate agents, every single real estate agent in the country. And there are small parts each year of the retraining that are compulsory. And this year, or last year, sorry, it was Te Reo. And unlike previous compulsory things, you had to take the Te Reo course or the Māori compulsory part through an online video tutelage provided by the now defunct or in huge trouble combined polytechnic that was all Te Treaty based and everything. And it taught you about how to say a prayer or a karakia and a pōwhiri and what that was and a few choice phrases. And Janet Dixon said, nah, on religious grounds, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to learn someone else's religion. It's not mine. And we talked to her yesterday. She said that led to her getting essentially fired by Harcourts in Howick. And there was legal action around it. She said, if you want to know the legal stuff, talk to my lawyer. And, of course, that is the best thing to do. So Stephen Franks joins us now. How are you, Stephen?
Very well, Sean.
All right. What is the legal action? I really want to clarify this in my own mind. What is the legal action that Janet Dixon is taking?
We filed, a week ago, we filed for a judicial review. The ground of the complaint that the board, the real estate agency authority didn't have the power to require that kind of training because it doesn't have anything to do with the skills or that are necessary, and it doesn't have to do with the role of occupational licensing and protecting us from the dishonest or the deeply incompetent.
Okay. Would the rainbow diversity training that's compulsory this year fall into the same category?
It probably does, but we haven't been asked to look at that. I mean, there are a number of these occupational authorities have been around for 100 years, the sort of semi-self or self-regulation to protect the reputation of an industry, but mainly to protect that they get the powers from Parliament to regulate who can be in their industry, to protect the public, to protect the people who are their customers, because they have skills and knowledge that the ordinary people don't have, and they have to go to these agents and they can expect them to know what the law is. They can expect them to understand the rules on conflict of interest when you can remain silent and when you can't. That's quite a lot to know. But our argument is it was unreasonable for them to have set that as a requirement, and it was especially unreasonable for them to have refused to give her a conscientious objector exemption. And the consequence, 5 years of cancellation of her ability to work in the industry, is outrageous.
Yeah, okay. So, and look, when I covered this last year, it appeared to me, and I'm not sure if we had an interview with the authority, but I certainly read their internal and their external communications, that this Te Reo, this Māori aspect, compulsion aspect to the retraining last year was driven largely because they saw themselves as a government entity and then were required as a government entity to act in regard to the principles or in keeping with the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. And that meant promoting the Māori language and Māori culture. So really it was driven by a wider government agenda. Does that have bearing on the judicial review that you're making? Because they could equally argue we are complying with our obligations under the Treaty of Waitangi here.
Oh, it'll be an interesting argument. There are no such obligations. Wellington is infested with people going around saying that there are partnership obligations on everyone who's accepted any government gold, but it's not true. But that we haven't yet seen the answer from the authority. They may raise that in their answer to our complaint. There's a hearing scheduled for Monday because we've asked that they, for an orders that she not lose her licence until the main hearing's over. But we haven't.
Will that hearing be public? Can we pop along?
Yeah, we think it's unlikely to go ahead. We can't see that the institute that the authority has any real reason to oppose the.
Oh no, the Treaty of Waitangi. Yeah. That's why. But Stephen, so if they were to back down and say, okay, we grant you your, and what was her claim to not do it? Religious dispensation.
Yeah, she's a Christian. She says she has her own faith, and she shouldn't be compelled to
learn someone else's.
To learn someone else's, or to look as if she's. But a lot of this is the kind of oppression that's often talked about, that where it's not real violence, but they call it violence when you're compelled to do something because of the social consequences. We've had an absolute storm of support for her from agents who say, they were humiliated. They sat there in silence listening to stuff they didn't agree with, but no one felt free to express it.
Yeah, and that is a bad state of affairs for any society. She's also lost her job at Harcourts in Howick. Are you acting in relation to that, or does that problem go away if the real estate authority folds on this?
She's very loyal, and she's been at Harcourts a long while, and she really respects the people she works with. She didn't want to raise that. I think they're like many of the big businesses in New Zealand. I don't know whether it was a decision made in Howick or whether
I got the impression it wasn't. I got the impression it was some wokester or someone afraid of being socially cancelled in the social media pile-on from the wokes. That was the impression I got, Stephen.
Yeah, well, the only real answer to that from society is to make them even more scared that they'll be New Zealand's Bud Light of the real estate industry. And if we don't know really why the REA made this rule, but presumably there was someone pushing for it or people supporting it. We don't know why they've dug in and got themselves a King's Council when it could have easily been dealt with.
Who's representing them?
Andrew Butler.
Okay, so they're spending a bit of dough on this.
They're spending real estate agents' money on this. We've seen no sign that they've actually asked the agents what they think is necessary.
Because they know damn well what the answer would be. When we ran the story last year, we got some reaction to it. But as I said, mainstream media were too busy talking up the Labor government at that stage. Stephen, this could all go away. The real estate agents authority or the real estate authority says we accept and we grant you the dispensation. There is no threat to your licence. Then it all just goes away, doesn't it?
As far as the authority does, yes, but it really raises a bigger question, and I think the Deputy Prime Minister, Winston Peters, mentioned this when he first commented last week. It's necessary because of these bodies. It's not just real estate. These occupational licensing bodies have become infested with the believers, the new religion, and it really is necessary for Parliament to take away their powers to impose their own views. They should be secular, neutral, non-political bodies there to protect the consumers. Otherwise, they should have their powers taken away.